What's up, everybody? I am Jaspreet Singh from the MinorityMindset.com and welcome to the Minority Mindset. So we haven't done a real estate walkthrough in a while, and one of my favorite properties just went vacant. So I figured this would be a good time to do another real estate walkthrough. So let's go inside and talk some real estate. So the reason this is one of my favorite properties is because of its location. We are in a small downtown area right now. You can see how densely populated it is. And just a couple blocks that way, there is the downtown, which has like all these shops and restaurants and bars. So a lot of cool things to do. A lot of people want to be in this area, and it's really kind of like hip and happening place to be. There's a lot of developments happening. So that's why I really wanted to be in this area. I bought this particular property out of probate back in 2015. It was one of the last single family deals that I did. And I got this deal because an agent that I was working with got the notification that this probate court had this property that a family wanted to sell. So somebody had lived in this property for a very long time and they passed away, and then the family just wanted to get rid of the property very quickly. So then the probate court contacted this real estate agent who contacted me, and we were able to pick up this property for $123,000, and that was quite a bit below market value. It needed quite a bit of work because, well, the property was really outdated at the time. You can't see it now, but there was all this ugly wallpaper and there was this like shag carpet everywhere. So it needed a little bit of work. We put in about $10,000 into the property to make it modern, to make it looking nice. But we got it for a decent deal, even including the renovations, because we were able to come in and buy the property quickly. If you wanted to buy a home to live in, if you came in here and saw it the way it was back in 2015, it was pretty beat up. You would not want to buy it just because of the way it looked, but that's what creates opportunities for investors. So we bought it for $123,000, put in another $10,000 into it, and we were listing it for rent at the time for around $1,100. So after paying all of our expenses and bills, that left us with right around a 6% return on our money, which was okay. It wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst, but it's because we're in a downtown urban area. Urban areas tend to have kind of lower returns. So we listed it for $1,100, and then over the years, we kept raising the rents because there's so much development and stuff happening here that rents started to go up. We're actually planning on listing this property now in 2020, again for rent between $1,500 and $1,600. So from $1,100 to $1,600, it's a pretty big jump, but that's what happens when you are in an area where there's a ton of developments happening. Like right before this whole pandemic happened, there was something like 13 brand new restaurants and bars that opened up over the last year or so, just a few blocks away. So there's a lot of people that want to be in this area, and that's what kind of helps drive the property values up and the rental values up. When we bought this property, we were all in for just under $135,000. Now the same property is being valued on Zillow and through comparables. I know Zillow isn't the most accurate source, but even through comparables down the street, properties are selling between the range of $200,000 and $235,000. So property values have gone up, and with that, rents have gone up too. So the tenant that was here before, they were here for quite some time. They were here for some years, and I like long-term leases, but I'm gonna get into some things that I learned and some things that I did right in this property in a little bit. But something happened where this tenant just abruptly ended the lease and moved out. So we just got this property back. They just moved out, let us know, and we just started the renovations, which is why it kind of looks messy at the same time as messed up. So that's what we're doing right now. So I want to talk about some of the things that I did right and some of the things that I did wrong in this property. First, location. This location, I'm very happy that I bought in this area. I actually am trying to acquire a couple more properties in this area. I love investing in these urban kind of smaller downtowns because people want to be here, and you want to invest in places where there's growing demand, because that demand is going to help property values go up because more people are going to want to be there. And when there's more people that want to live in a place, that's also going to drive rents up. So, if you can find a location where you see a lot of developments happening and a lot of people wanting to be, especially young people, that can help you find a property that's going to give you growing rents and growing property values for the future. I don't typically buy properties because I want to sell it for a much higher price. I'm not a flipper, but I want to see rents that are going to continue to go up And I want to see an area where people are going to want to live. Like I don't want to buy a property and then find out that, oh, nobody wants to live here anymore. It's going to be vacant from now on. Number two, if I am looking for a single family home, I typically look for 3 bedrooms minimum because they sell and rent a lot easier. So this one has 3 bedrooms. Most of them are pretty spacious. And you can see that we have hardwood flooring here now. The previous had carpet everywhere, and we had to rip up the carpet and kind of refinish all the floors to make it look nicer. Don't put ugly carpets on top of hardwood. The other 2 bedrooms are upstairs, and this property has 2 bathrooms. So typically I look for at least 3 bedrooms. And if we go up here, you will see the other 2 bedrooms, pretty spacious. You can see they're not tiny. I don't know if you can see really on the camera, but there's a good amount of space in each bedroom here. So you can fit a bed, a dresser, large enough space to kind of do your thing for a whole family. Now, if we go back down, the other thing that I like to look for is, at the minimum, a basement or a garage. I always like to have a basement in properties as opposed to a crawl space or a slab. So if you're newer into real estate, there's a few different types of foundations you can have. A basement is a basement, and a crawl space is when a property is kind of built with a gap underneath it. So let's say you have a piping issue, then this gap is where people will have to go and fix the plumbing. So it's kind of difficult to do that. And if you have a slab, that means it's literally just built on a concrete or cement slab. And so if you have a plumbing issue on the bottom of the house, it can be very expensive to fix because then you gotta bust the cement. So this property has a basement. It's not a super huge basement. I mean, it's got kind of a low ceiling height. I'm gonna stand down here so you can see. My head is almost touching the ceiling. So it's not huge, but it gets the job done because if there was any sort of like plumbing issue or piping issue, somebody could come down here very easily and fix it. So that's one of the things that I look for now in a property is, one, you want a basement or garage for storage. And when it comes to foundation, I look for a basement because repair-wise, it makes things a whole lot easier. Then, like always, kitchens and bathrooms sell homes, right? Well, they also lease out homes. So one thing that I always like to look for are stainless steel appliances. Well, I don't look for these, I put them in there when we renovate, because people like to be taken care of, right? I want our tenants to feel at home, right? I don't want to treat tenants like they're just whatever. You know, you want to make them feel like they're at home and take care of the property. And sometimes it doesn't work out, right? Like we're seeing here, we had some damage. I mean, it's not super bad, but there is damage. The more effort you put in to take care of your tenants, the more that they will take care of you. Now, of course, there are exceptions. You haven't seen me make a video about issues in a while because we haven't had any tenant issues in so many years. But stainless steel is a nice touch, especially if you want to get the higher tenant clientele, because they feel more appreciated and people like stainless steel. Now, let's talk about some of the things that I learned in this property and some of the mistakes that I made, because every real estate deal is gonna teach you something. No matter how many real estate deals you do, everyone is gonna teach you something. So let's start by going outside, shall we? So I'm gonna go here to the back and you're gonna see that there are a lot of trees on this property. So trees, most of us think are very beautiful, and trees are beautiful. I love trees, I love nature, but trees also come with liabilities. So as you can see, we have these branches that are kind of coming over the house right now. So in the beginning, we spent thousands of dollars just kind of cutting down big trees. There was other trees over here, you don't see them anymore. And on the front of the house, there was also a huge tree with these huge limbs that were going right over the house. So we spent thousands of dollars taking down those trees and taking down some of those limbs. Now, it's been some time and you can kind of see again that we have some overgrowth that's going over the house. Well, the thing is, it's not too bad right now, but if these branches get too big and you have a storm and one of the branches fall, it's gonna cause damage in the property and it could hurt somebody. You don't want to run into those liability issues, so you want to make sure you're taking care of them. So trees, while they can look good, they also come with a lot of liabilities, so understand the cost of taking care of them. Also, coming to trees, trees also have roots, right? This is Nature 101. Well, some of these roots, like in the front of the property that we had, those roots, they get bigger and bigger and they can go under the property and they can damage your plumbing that can cause a lot of sewage backups and a lot of other problems, which can be very expensive. So you want to be aware of how close these trees are to your property, how big the roots are, and where your plumbing is, because if they kind of crash into each other, that's going to become very expensive to fix. Finally, when it comes to trees, you also have neighbors. So our neighbors here are actually very nice and helpful, which is very good for us. But some of these trees have gone over onto their property, and some of their trees have come over onto our property. So this has kind of started, not really a huge issue, but the neighbors have been working with our property management company to figure out a way to trim our trees so they don't go over their property, and trim their trees so they don't go over our property. So sometimes you don't have the best neighbors, and they could be a lot harder to deal with if they're not willing to work with you. So that's something to think about. Next, let's talk about tenants, because typically I have always been a person who was pro long-term leases. If anybody wanted to renew the lease or do a multi-year lease, I was typically always for it. One thing I learned from this property, where this tenant was on a multi-year lease. Actually, they were on a 1-year lease, but they kept extending it. And then they just abruptly walked away. And then we came in and saw, all this damage in the property. You can see the wall is torn up over here. There was just garbage everywhere. I mean, they just kind of like got up and left. I don't know the whole issue of what happened. It might have had something to do with the pandemic. I don't know. But one thing that I learned is if you have multi-year tenants, so tenants who are going to be there for a long time, do inspections in the property annually before you renew a lease. So what I used to do back in the day was every 6 months in every property or every unit that we had, we would do a walkthrough of all the properties, and then the property managers would go in, take pictures of everything, see if there's any damages, and just kind of stay up to date with what's going on with the tenants. I stopped doing that a while ago just because I started to think this might be kind of intrusive and wanted to give tenants more privacy. But there has to be a balance, right? If you own a property, you want to make sure that your tenants are taking care of it, especially if they're going to be there for a long time. Like if a tenant's going to be there for 3 years, you don't want to find out 3 years later that they have not been taking care of your property at all, and it's just filthy and disgusting, because this waste and not taking care of your property can compound and build up, and it becomes more expensive to take care of. So if you have a tenant that's going to renew their lease, be there for a few years, make sure that you're inspecting the property at least once a year. That way you know that they're taking care of the property. We had a couple red flags here. It wasn't anything crazy, but we had a couple like violations from the city. I don't know if you can see outside, but there was like grass. Can't really see it too good here, but there was grass and weeds that were overgrown. So we got these violations from the city a couple times. It wasn't too big of a deal. It was like these $45 violations. The tenant took care of them, and they took care of the violations later. One time the city said that there was too much junk in the lawn. We told the tenants, they took care of it. But now that I think back at it, that should have been a red flag for us to really go in and see what's going on with the property, see if they're actually taking care of the property inside as well. So something to be aware of is, if you have a tenant there for a long time, make sure you're reviewing the property, make sure that it's staying in good shape. And finally, let's talk about fireplaces, okay? Fireplaces are great, but they can also be fire hazards. Now, I'm an attorney, as you know, but I'm not your attorney. But let me give you a little legal tip as somebody who's not your attorney, okay? Fire hazards are not good as a landlord because you want to limit your liability as much as possible. So if you want to keep the beauty of a fireplace, which we wanted to do, then one thing that you should do at the very least is do an annual inspection on your fireplace or anything that has a liability like that. That way, if anything, hopefully it doesn't ever happen, but if anything were to happen, you can show that, okay, every year I've been getting this certificate and I've been getting it professionally inspected to make sure that this hazard, this fireplace, is safe. You just want to make sure you're always looking out for yourself for any worst case type of scenario, right? I mean, anything is possible. Hopefully nothing bad ever happens, but you want to make sure you're looking out for yourself because, you never want to run into that issue. I had a tenant sue me one time because they slipped in the bathtub and they said that the bathtub was too slippery when it was wet. So these are things that you have to deal with. They ended up losing the lawsuit, they ended up getting thrown out, but it was a big headache. I mean, these are things that you just have to deal with because You know, if you're in the United States, we are in a litigious country where anybody can sue anyone for anything. A couple good things I want to mention before I end this video is if you're looking for deals, especially ones that are below market value, it really helps to have a team like of real estate agents who can bring you deals, right? So I am a real estate agent myself, but I still work with other real estate agents to find deals because, you know, other people have specialties. Like this property was a probate property. And so I knew somebody who had it in with the probate court and they were able to present this property to me. So I was able to find this great property below market value. And another thing you want to pay attention to is the amount of work that's required in a property, right? Like if you walk into a property and it looks beautiful, you're gonna think it's beautiful as an investor, and everybody else is gonna think it's beautiful as well as a potential homeowner. So now you're gonna be competing with a whole bunch of people to buy this property because everybody's gonna think the property is beautiful. But if you walk into a property and it looks ugly, then homeowners who wanna be homeowners are gonna think it's ugly and they're not gonna wanna buy the property. And the only people you're gonna be competing with are other investors. So if that's what you're doing, then you have the opportunity to kind of not compete with the whole world and only compete with other investors. That way you can take advantage of deals when they come your way. So, you know, that's why I always look for distressed deals, whether it's financially distressed or physically distressed, because I have contractors that can come in and take an ugly property and make it look beautiful. And if you do that, you can buy a property way below market value, fix it up, and still own a property below market value and get the great rents. Now, before we hop off, I'm just gonna show you one more thing. So this bathroom is getting a lot of work done right now. So we were talking about sometimes things look a lot worse than they are. I'm gonna see this. You can see there's no toilet here and there's a lot of work being done. So this is kind of in the middle stages of the renovation, or the early stages rather. But you know, that's why there's a lot more to real estate than just what meets the eye. You gotta be willing to come in, take the property, be willing to renovate it. And sometimes a tenant might not take the best care of your property, but that's where you gotta have your precautions in, you gotta have your safeguards in there, and you gotta have cash saved up to protect you from situations like this. It happens, that's a part of real estate. I mean, it hasn't happened in a long time, but it does happen. And that's just a part of being a real estate investor. And you want to make sure you factor this into your models. Anyways, that's all that I have for this property. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm about to go look at another deal just down the street because I really like this area. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the Minority Mindset YouTube channel. And as always, keep hustling.